Now we welcome Farhood Nishat, who will be speaking on fortifying the future cloud innovation and security imperatives. I request Farhood Nishat to share the screen and start the presentation.
Hey guys, I hope you all are doing fine. Am I audible to each one of you?
Yes, so you are audible.
Okay, thanks so much. Let me share my screen so that you all can see my slides, right?
Yes, sir, it is visible. You can
Okay,
proceed.
okay. Uh, so, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me in this conference, and especially Dr. Inam and all the guys, Abdullah, Ruxar, Wakas, who have been doing a great job in maintaining this and running this show. So thank you so much for this. And the topic for today, just like Roos told, is fortifying the future cloud innovations and security imperatives. My name is Farhood Nishat. This is a bit of my introduction. I have been working in the industry for almost like 9 to 10 years. My core competencies are cloud computing and information security. Right now, working as a senior manager for cloud managed services for a US-based organization. It goes by the name of ATSG. I had a couple of international publications and around 25 plus international certifications from different vendors. So let's start with the cloud. I'm not going. I actually had a lot of slides, but obviously I had a little time, and I've seen that Dr. Hashim and Miss Banu has already talked a lot about cloud and the basics of cloud. So I'm not going to go into the basics of cloud. So that I don't want to waste anyone's of time by repeating the things that we have already talked about. So a brief thing like what is the cloud? I know that many of you guys have already have an idea about the cloud, but still, cloud is basically in simple layman terms, cloud is an organized series of computers located in different data centers and all around the globe. Just like we have seen different cloud providers, the public cloud providers like Amazon, Google, Rackspace, Citrix, Alibaba, Azure. What all of these cloud providers do is that just like whenever you need any compute, you go to a market, you purchase a certain resources like a laptop with certain level of memory, hard disk, and everything. But now instead of purchasing the hardware resources yourself, what you do is that you sign up to any of the public cloud provider and tell them their requirements, and they will give you that machine into their own data centers. So they will be responsible for managing that machine, and you just need to connect to that machine using a simple URL over any of the device that you have. You just need a simple device and a pretty much good internet connection. That's what you all need. And obviously, we have a lot of options of scalability, scale in, scale out, and then comes the other parts of it. So instead of building up a whole data center on yourself, you just need to tell the requirements to the cloud provider, and they will provide you with the compute, storage, networking, firewall, VPNs, and everything. So it's a holistic view of how does cloud really work. There are a lot of pieces on how actually cloud works, but like everything comes under two basic domains. One is the internal working of the cloud service providers and the end user interaction with the cloud service provider. So Amazon, Azure, GCP, they are the CSPs, and if you are taking services from any of the cloud provider, you are the end user. Okay, which are when obviously you are interacting with those cloud services. So there are different things like the internal networking, APIs, the hardware. It all comes under the internal working of the CSP. Whenever you are going to spin up a machine in Amazon or Azure, you are not aware that if that machine is in which data center or in which cluster. But the only information you have is that you have a certain specs of machine. Either it is in a region like East 1, US East 1, US East 2, but you would not be having any other details. Okay, so that is all the internal working of any of the CSP. Then comes the end user interaction, your part. Uh, you have to interact with that machine. For that, you need a user interface that can be a browser, a console, or a portal, or the CLI interface. It doesn't matter if you are going to choose any of the services, either it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. All it depends upon the requirements that you have and what you are doing. So whenever we talk about cloud or cloud security, it automatically comes to our mind that it is something very, very a lot technical, and everything has to do something technical. but it's not the case. Whenever we talk about the cloud, there are actually two parts of cloud working. And when you talk about the cloud security, one is the technical piece of it, and the other part is the non-technical part of it. The service integrations, the cloud configurations, migrations, tuning of your services, all the infrastructure deployments, and the networking of all of your machines. It all comes under the technical part of it. And the non-technical part of it, the billing operations, the cost operations, the compliance of your environment, the vendor management, all the third-party solutions that you are using or integrating with your cloud infrastructure, and obviously the sales and marketing part of it. So whenever we talk about security, security is not just technical piece. It's basically a mindset. People usually take security as a mindset. Whenever you have a certain mindset, you can see that thing happening in everything. Just like if you are into arts, or if you are doing sketching, or if you are doing painting or anything, whenever you see anything, you will see a certain special things, artistic things about that thing. It just goes with the security. So if you have a security mindset, you see anything, even if you are drawing your money from an ATM machine, you will see that people are throwing their receipts in the dustbin. A technical person would see that as a security vulnerability. So whenever we are trying to secure the cloud, we have to look into the technical and the non-technical pieces of how the cloud is actually working and what we have to do. Now let's see, is cloud security is really a concern. Many people think that when we are leveraging the cloud services, everything will be fine and we don't have to worry about especially the security piece and a lot of other things. But the fact is totally opposite. When the cloud is providing you a certain level of visibility to work, there's also a security piece to it. So this is a recent survey done by Gartner, that why most of the companies are not moving to the cloud. So there are different challenges where the different company CTOs and CEOs have told Gartner that why they are not moving to the cloud. But the major concern which many of the CEOs and CTOs has shown is the security and privacy concern. Many people think that if we are going to migrate towards cloud, our data, our information, everything will not be secure. So that's why they are still not moving to the cloud. But it all depends upon how you are managing your cloud. It doesn't mean that a cloud is insecure, but it's all about the practices that we are not following going into the cloud. So let me give you like a couple of case studies where we can see that there were many big names who were using and leveraging the cloud services for all of their work, but somehow they got hacked or they had different attacks just because they are not having the proper uh, cloud base. Let me see, I think slides are not moving. Guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Farhood. The slides were not moving. I raised hand for that.
Okay, if the slides are not moving, if you have anything, you can just like interrupt me in between, because when you are sharing the screen, it's not
But
showing
well,
you.
they're working now. That's
let
fine
me
now.
let me not keep it as it is. Okay, so I can know that slides are moving. Okay, so okay, we were talking about some certain case studies, and then I've put the four recent case studies in here where different big names were using the cloud, but somehow they got hacked or they got different attacks over their cloud services because their cloud environment is not pretty much secure, or their practices are not as per the standard market practices. So this one case study is about an organization goes by the name of EasyJet. It's one of the biggest UK airline service provider. They got breached in 2020, where 9 million of their EasyJet customers' data got exposed over the internet. It was all available over the darknet to buy anyone, and for due to this attack, they got fined for around 4% of their global annual turnover, uh, because they were not following the GDPR, and by not following the GDPR means that they are not following the best cloud practices within the UK region. So that's why UK government fined them, and after this attack, they changed a lot of things into their cloud environment, and then they moved forward. The other big incident was with the LinkedIn itself. It was in 2021. By an estimate and by the recent data, there are around 956 million users who are actively using LinkedIn. But in 2021, around 700 million users, almost a 92% of the total LinkedIn users database, they all got exploited. Everything was available over the dark web forum in June 2021 to buy, and it was available to get purchased by the cryptocurrencies. The users' email addresses, full names, their phone numbers, geolocation records, everything got breached. And because they were using a certain API, third-party API, which was integrated with their LinkedIn, and the hacker actually exploited that API, and then they, fetch all the LinkedIn data. Twitch, I guess most of you are familiar who are into gaming. They know what Twitch is. Twitch is a streaming platform for gamers. So in 2021, the whole Twitch cloud-based code got breached. Almost like 125 GB of sensitive data was posted over a forum by Forum 4chan with the Twitter link, and it included the 3 years payout reports of the creators, Twitch source code, and a lot of other things. It also got hacked due to an integration of a third-party API which was integrated within their cloud, and it actually released the red teaming tool. So whenever we talk about cloud security or anything related to security, there are two pieces of it: the red team and the blue team. Red team is basically the team which are responsible for putting up the attacks. The blue team is basically the team who's responsible for defending those attacks. So if you can know about the red teaming tools of any organization, your own red team can deploy a perfect attack of that organization. So with this attack, all the tools which Twitch team were using, they also got publicized over the internet. Then GitHub, all the software engineers, they use GitHub. So in 2022, 35K repositories of GitHub got infected, and a malware was actually added to the npm scripts, their docker images, and all the users who were using the GitHub, their security keys, their cloud IAM keys, the crypto keys, application details, infra details, all of those things got hacked, and it was the whole environment was available over the dark web to purchase anything. So by all of these like 4 case studies, there are a lot of cases, since like the most of the security incident started happening around like the major incident starting happening around 2008, and there are a lot of case studies if you look into history. But all of these case studies show us that there are basically 6 main things that we have to look into it from the cloud security perspective whenever we are moving towards cloud, or we are deploying cloud, or we are working into the cloud. So the foremost thing is the cloud governance. Obviously, when we are using cloud governance, we have to use a certain policies around the governance to make sure that all of our data is secure. Then the lack of expertise. The main issue which comes with the cloud or any other tools, to be honest, in the market is the lack of expertise. We don't have a lot of people who have those expertise which are needed. So the lack of expertise is actually a vulnerability when we talk about cloud or any other technical tool. Then the compliance we have in the market, there are certain level of compliance standards that each provider has to follow. So if we are compliant and we are actually following all the pieces around compliance for our infrastructure, there is around like 90 to 95% of chances that we are secure. Then the cost management is obviously it's not directly related to the security, but it is somehow related, because whenever we are facing any issue, if we are managing our environment perfectly, or if we get into some attack, there will be a lot of cost related things involved, which can impact the overall organization's working. Then we have a service outage, just like I think Dr. Hisham has told about the DDoS attack and some other attacks. So whenever we are facing any attacks over cloud, over our infrastructure, we have to make sure that our environment is pretty much in high availability. And if somehow we got into some attack, we shouldn't be facing any of the 100% service outage. And for that, we should have a capability to switch between different clouds. So now in the market, there is a concept of people are not working over a single cloud, they are actually working over multiple clouds. So there are integration in the market which we can use to integrate our, let's say if we have, if you got your private cloud, you can integrate that private cloud with Amazon, with Azure, with GCP, and any other cloud provider, and you can actually make sure that all of your infrastructure is divided in all of those environments for high availability, for redundancy purposes, for security purposes. And whenever, if you are facing any of the concern with any of the cloud provider, you can actually shift all of your data from one cloud provider to another cloud provider. So this is something that every security practitioner should have an idea about. This is actually a very interesting slide. I know it's look huge and it's look confusing, but uh, it's a pro and a con in working in cloud, and especially in the security domain. So working in the cloud is like having all of those skills within a single person. So it's basically a lot of to ask from a single person, but at the same time it's also a good thing that you are able to learn a lot of things. So whenever you are working or managing cloud for any organization, your team must have the capabilities for all of these domains. Obviously, in enterprise and larger organization, they have different teams with different set of rules and different set of expertise which are able to do all of these things. But I personally think that if you are a cloud architect, if you are a cloud solution engineer, if you are a migration expert, you have to know all of these things, at least like 50 to 70% of these things you should have in mind before deploying any of the cloud infrastructure, or if you want to migrate one customer to another. There was a recent incident where we had to migrate one of our customers from on-prem to the cloud. So all of these things were considered before getting into that migration. Okay, so there comes obviously the technical part of it, where you talk about the vulnerability management, the vulnerability assessment, incident response. Then there come the capacity building part of it, where you have to train the new resources how they can leverage and use a cloud environment with the best security practices. Then there come the reporting part of it, the governance part of it, the rules and regulation. Then it comes the compliance part of it. Let's say if you have a customer who is using who is into the healthcare industry, you have to make sure that their environment is HIPAA compliant. If you got a customer who is into the banking sector, you have to make sure that they have the necessary PCI and DSS compliance. If your customer is using, let's say if they are generic IT providers, you have to make sure that their environment is as per the compliance of ISO 27001. If they are actually the cloud providers, you have to make sure that their environment is as per the SOC 1, SOC 2 compliance. Then we talk about the actual management of the cloud platform. Okay, all of those things, cryptography, the network design, data protection. And if you are doing any third party risk assessment, like the ongoing patching, ongoing development of your tools, ongoing penetration testings, vulnerability scans, it should be a part of your whole package when you are doing any cloud management, or if you're providing such services to your customers. Okay, so I know it looks very simple. I've tried to make it very simple. uh, Whenever we talk about making any application over the cloud secure, many people take it as a very technical task and make it very confusing. But as per me, the experience that I have in the past almost 9-10 years, what I think is that if you want to make your application over the cloud secure, there are actually two pieces to it. One is the science of it, and the artistic part to it. The science is basically using and leveraging the different tools, different techniques which you can use to actually make your applications secure. And the artistic part of it is that your imagination, your actually the actual capability of you to visualize those things, what are the impact of those security conditions into your end user. Because all of these things, what you are doing is you are actually trying to make your end user work easy and secure. So if you're deploying anything which is making your environment secure, but your end user are facing a lot of challenges by those security controls, it's not feasible. Your end user, your management, everything, they will not be happy with that. So if you are, even if you are, let's say if you are making any application and if you have to publish that application over the internet, you have to make sure that your application is secure. But alongside, you have to make sure that all of those security practices are not, interfering the end user experience. So if you have these two mindset while creating your application or while securing your application, I think you can create a very good sort of application which is secure. So this is a very, a very simple sort of example, which I have put into these slides, because I know that we have a different sort of audience in this conference today. So I've tried to kept it as easy and as simple as possible. So let's take a use case. For example, you are using Facebook. We usually get such type of messages over our social platform like Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, that you get a message and it asks you to click over the link to know or get to anything. So let's say you are using Facebook, you got a message, and it says that click here to know more. You clicked over that message. You are not a techie person, and you clicked over that message. So as soon as you clicked over that message, all of your content contacts in the Facebook got spammed with that message. Okay. So obviously, when you have seen that all that lame message got distributed to all of your contacts, you got furious. You get in touch with the Facebook and you told them that this is something not secure, and you know that Facebook is a big huge organization, and you have an idea that this is something not secure and Facebook should look into it. So how Facebook can look into it? Just imagine that Facebook is a big cloud provider and they have all of their application, all of their things into the cloud. So whenever they get such sort of request from any of the user, what are the three major things or the three major stages that they should look into it to resolve that issue? It can be an example of you. So let's say if you are managing any of cloud environment, or if you are using the cloud environment, what you can do to manage search security incident. For that, you have to make sure that three things are in place before you are into the cloud or you have made your environment public for the use which is on the cloud. One is the monitoring. You have to make sure that all of your environment is getting properly monitored. Everything, starting from your virtual machines, your network, your VPNs, your VPCs, everything going out of your environment and coming in, you are maintaining and monitoring the logs of it, and everything you have is properly monitored, and you have certain dashboards configured where you are getting different sort of runtime alerts. The second part of it is gaining visibility. You have to make sure that all of your cloud environment is properly visible and accessible to you. There should not be any piece to it where you are not aware. So let's say if you got like around like 100 or 200 or like 10,000, 12,000 machines into your environment, you have to make sure you have to create a certain process where you have the visibility all of those machines. So right now, if I talk about a real case scenario, in one of our environments, our team is managing around, I think, 15,000 machines. But for those 15,000 machines, we have developed a process where we have all of those details. Not even a single machine is out of our sight, and we got everything configured. Everything is under our radar. So if any machine goes down or any incident is getting happen, we are getting proper alerts for all of those 15,000 machines. Okay. Then managing access. Managing access is a very crucial part of security when you talk about cloud. So if you are on the cloud, you have to make sure that you have a certain policies in place to give the access to the users as per their need. Many of the time when we are working, we usually create users for the people just because we know them or we are in friends with them. But to be professional, we have to make sure that any person who wants need, it had to be documented, and it had to be approved by their concerned manager or their concerned director or whoever they reports to, and they should have the required access. They should not having the admin access, or they should be having the certain level of access which they actually need. So if coming back to that example, so if Facebook cloud got all of these three items, three stages in place, only then they will be able to look into that incident. So like let's take this example to your own organization or your own research area. If you are managing any environment, if you have anything over your cloud, if you don't have these things in place, you will not be able to secure your environment, or you will not be able to look into the things which are happening over your environment. Okay. So whenever we talk about security, either if it's in cloud, if it is on prem or anywhere, there are actually the four hierarchies which we have to make sure they are in place. This is actually a hierarchy which was made by IEEE for the cloud governance and cloud security program. And it talks about the data governance, the data protection, data access, and then the data user. Starting from the data governance, the basic part of it. So data governance means that all the data that you have over your cloud, it should be policized, it should be classified, it should have proper inventory management, and the rule of minimization is in place. When you talk about the governance, it should be compliant with the standard which you are following for your organization. Then when you have your data into the cloud and it is properly configured with the data governance modules, then the next part is the data governance, sorry, the data protection. Data protection means that the data that you have into your cloud as per the data governance policies is properly protected. By protection, we means that the encryption is in place, the data access is in place with the terms of tokenization, the storage. If you talk about the Amazon, the S3 buckets, they are one of the top most vulnerabilities in the cloud. All the hackers, all the people who are into red teaming, or they are the black hats, they try to exploit the S3 buckets over Amazon. So like it's like a hot cake in the market, trying to exploit the S3 buckets. So we have to make sure that all of those storage, all of our data is properly encrypted, and we have certain rules in place for security. Then we got our data governed, we got our data protected. The third piece of it is the data access. Just like we discussed that the data access should be properly managed. The authentication, authorization, access control, sharing of data, all of those configurations should be properly documented, properly maintained, and it should be properly configured. Then the last part of it is the data usage. Once we have these three things in place, we can detect and prevent of the data loss, and that can be done by proper monitoring of all of data. The logs, the CloudWatch tools, the event IDs, everything that we have to make sure that coming in, coming out of your cloud, it's properly monitored. So by that way, we can make sure that all the data which we have in our cloud is properly maintained, and we are preventing and detecting all the data losses going in and out of our cloud. So referring to the same model, uh, I know there are there. If I talk about this conference, I know a couple of people who are using the public clouds like Amazon, Azure, GCP, the three top cloud providers in the market. So whenever we are configuring any of the environment in the cloud, either it's any of these three providers, these are a couple of services which these providers offer to make sure that your data is properly governed, it's protected, the data access is in place, and the data usage is properly configured. So the data governance is it's actually a part of your your whole plan. So let's take an example. If you are working as a cloud security architect, okay, and you got a project, or if you are working for any organization, uh, a customer comes to you or anyone comes to you and they have their certain infrastructure over on prem, and they want you to move that data, all of that infrastructure to the cloud, and they want you to architect the whole thing. So while architecting the whole environment, you have to make sure the security pieces to it. Okay. And when you are configuring those security pieces you have to follow this model. If you're not following this model, you will be in hot waters in no time. Okay. So I'm not going into the details of all of these applications due to lack of time, and we have to be a lot of technical about it, and I think it would not be the use case of this scenario. So, but this model, these four steps should be considered whenever you're talking about the cloud security. This is something that very people are not familiar about. So there is a general concept in the market and in the technical users. Many people think that if they have their environment over the cloud, they are not responsible for a lot of things, but it's not the case. So this model gives you an idea. If you are using cloud, either it's a co-location means that you have certain environment in your on-prem and certain infrastructure into the cloud. Then we have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So if you are using any of these three models, there are certain responsibilities which comes to you. You have to make sure whenever you are procuring anything from any of the cloud provider, it gives you an SLA document. SLA is goes by the name of service level agreement. So you are doing an SLA with that organization in which you actually sign the document that you will be responsible for certain things, and that cloud provider will be responsible for certain things. So let's take an example of infrastructure as a service. Okay, so for an example, you have your infrastructure deployed over Amazon. So what comes under your responsibility? What comes under the Amazon responsibility? So the physical security, obviously the physical hardware that is deployed into the Amazon data center, it comes under the Amazon. You don't have access to it, you cannot do anything about it. The infrastructure, because you have access to the infrastructure, so it will be the both parties, you and Amazon, who will be responsible for security of your infrastructure. Then the network controls, you have to make sure that proper ACLs are in place, network level ACLs are in place, the ports are blocked, the ports are configured, everything that is related to the firewalls, your security groups, your NACLs, it is in perfection. And it should comes under both parties. You actually have to connect with an engineer from Amazon where you tell them their requirements, and you both work over configuring all of these network controls. Then the application controls, because it's your infrastructure, so all the applications deployed over that infrastructure, it comes to you. You have to manage those application controls. If it's database, if it's some web application, you have to make sure that your environment is properly secured. Then the access management and identity, you have to make sure that the users which have access to your environment, it comes under you. You have to make sure all the certain level and the user use case based accesses over your environment. Endpoint detection, endpoint protection, if you have, let's say for example, if you got couple of, just like I've given you a scenario that we are managing around now like 15 16,000 machines for a single environment. There are a couple of different environments that we have, but in a single environment, one of the biggest one, we have around 16,000 machines. So all of those 16,000 machines, we have endpoint protection solutions installed and configured, and we are responsible for protecting those all 16K machines. And then the data classification, you have to make sure that either it's database, it's Excel sheets or anything, you have to configure the DLP, data loss protection policies, within your cloud. So this is the model which can be followed whenever we are interacting with any for provider or any for customer. We can make sure that we can actually make our SLAs, our documentation over this model, that these things come under our responsibilities and these things come under your responsibilities. So let's talk about the top 10 cloud security misconfigurations. So I usually say in a lot of my trainings that all of these things, cloud or anything, these are made by humans, and none of the human is 100% perfect. So all of these things cannot be perfect, because we are humans, we have flaws in ourselves. So all the things that we make, we usually have a habit of leaving some flaws in all of those things. So when we talk about the top 10 misconfigurations which actually lead to a lot of security disasters, the number one is the use of root user, or the by default credentials. If we are creating anything over the cloud, if we are using the root user, or if we are using the by default configurations or credentials, then we are at a big risk, because all of those things are publicly available, and we will not be able to uh, it's actually a kind of first level of security access, that we have to make sure that all the credentials are changed and they are as per your organization policies, and they should be as complex and as possible. Okay. Then the second point, storing long lived credentials in code machines repositories. So I have seen this, that the developers, they have actually this very bad habit. My apologies to all the developers in the conference, but whenever they are developing anything, they are writing a code, they have a habit of leaving the credentials into the code. So most of the security incident happens within the applications, because the hackers or the guys who are looking for such vulnerabilities, they keep on looking into the codes, and somehow they try to find the credentials of the actual application in the code, and they actually find it in most of the cases. So this is something that we have to make sure that the credentials are not left anywhere within the application, and all the credentials which we have, they should be at least rotated every 90 days. It can the rotation possibility or the schedule can change as per your environment, but the best practice is of 90 days. Then use of static permission. Static means a wildcard. Many of the times we have a simple policy created in our environment, and we keep on assigning that specific policy to all the users which are coming into our cloud. So it's a very bad practice. We have to make sure that we have a lot of permissions policies into our cloud, and we can provide different policies to different users depending upon their use cases. Then the non compliance. uh, Whenever we are working in any of the environments, security is something that none of us is concerned about until something happens. Okay, whenever everything is running fine, our operation is running fine, everyone is happy, the customer, the management, the cloud providers, everything is going good, we are not looking into the security pieces of it. But whenever something happens, any attacks come to in place, we got some data usage, everyone starts talking about the security asap. So that is something related to the human psychology, that we don't look into the things until something happens to that thing. So it also goes with the non-compliance of the environment. So just like we have talked, that we have to make sure that what kind of work we are doing. If we are into the financial transactions, we have to make sure that our environment is PCI compliant. If we are into cloud providers, like so for the organization which I work for, we are actually the cloud providers. So we are SOC 1 and SOC 2 compliant. Without this compliance, we cannot work in the market, we cannot provide the solutions to the customer, we cannot work into the United States or into the European region. And if you are a technical company, just like there was a speaker before me who was an entrepreneur and working over a lot of other organizations. So I'm sure that all the IT organizations have to be ISO compliant in order to make sure that their environment is clean. So all of these models, if you talk about these models, what they do is that they give you a certain rules, that if you implement into your organization, you are following a certain policies, and without following a certain policies, you cannot make your environment protected. Lack of encryption. Most of the time we are using the encryption at rest, but we are not using the encryption at transit. So for example, if you guys have a lot of data into your let's say laptop, you are locking that data or encrypting that data either with some third party tool or using the BitLocker or some application, but you are not concerned about transferring that data. So let's say if you have a file and you are transmitting that file to me or someone else over the internet through an email, uh, you should be concerned about the encryption between the transit, because most of the incident happens due to the man in the middle. They actually look into your transactions and they try to fetch your data between the transactions. So this is something that you have to make sure that all the data you have over your cloud, it should have both encryption in place, the encryption at rest and the encryption in transit. Then many of us has a habit of not reporting or not having the logs or not having the logging trials in place. This is something that we have to configure over all of our environments, specifically in the cloud. So let's say if we have an environment, we have to make sure that proper auditing of our tools, our environment, proper trails, proper logs are in place. What is happening, which user is accessing your environment at what time, what they are doing, what is going in and out of your environment, how the firewalls are working, how the network is going, how your resources, your, let's say your CPU memory is going. If you are getting any discrepancies over that, you should be getting proper alerts and it should be getting logged. uh, if you are following certain compliance, this is actually a part of compliance. So let's say if we talk about PCI DSS, PCI make sure that you have a logs of at least 1 year stored somewhere for your auditing purpose. If you don't have the logs of at least 1 year for your organization, you will not be getting a PCI compliance from the organization. Then we whenever we are creating any application, we try to make it publicly available. So for example, if you are creating any application for your cell phone or for your anything, you can actually deploy that application over the cloud. And to make it global, you make that application publicly accessible. But before doing that, you have to make sure that all the pieces are in place, and your IP based access is not configured. It should be with the proper URL, with the proper DNS configurations. It should be over HTTPS with proper port bindings in place. So this is what you have to make sure before making your environment public over any cloud. This is something which can be related to your BCP, your business continuity plan, your disaster recovery. So many of the time when we configure the cloud, or we are configuring or migrating anything over the cloud, due to lack of funds, or to make our to make our financial impact as least as possible, we try to configure all the things under one account, in one region, under one location, which is basically a huge flaw by the security in the overall infrastructure in the design. So whenever you are configuring anything over the cloud, you have to make sure that all the things are under different accounts, under different regions, and under different locations. That will give you actually two things. One is the high availability. So let's say if any of your region is going down, you will still be able to access all of your environment from another location, another region. And the other thing is security. So let's say if your one account got compromised somehow, you still be able to have your environment up and running from another environment, another account, another location, another region. Using your default credentials, we have already talked about it. And this one, dangling DNS with public buckets. So many of the tech geeky people I know, they are very much interested about using the S3 buckets if they want to deploy their application or their their websites, but they are not very much familiar about the dangling DNSs with the public buckets. Public buckets are one of the most vulnerable buckets in the cloud right now. And I usually give a live demo of how to hack Amazon public bucket. But obviously, we cannot do that right now. It take around 1 hour. We can search for any available public bucket in the Amazon, and then we can look out for different vulnerabilities in that public bucket. And if we found something, we can actually hack that public bucket and access the contents of that public bucket. It is something doable. Many of my friends are doing that on daily basis for obviously the learning purposes, and it is something very doable in the market right now. These are like 7 steps of security controls in the cloud. Okay, so whenever you have your environment into the cloud, you have to bifurcate that environment in 7 different steps, thinking from a perspective of a possible hacker. Okay, so if you are deploying your application into the cloud, to make it secure, you have to think like a person, a hacker. Just like if you want to secure your home, you have to think from a perspective of a possible robber, that what are the possible places from where a robber can come in. It just goes the same concept we have in the cloud. So if you have your environment in the cloud, you have to make sure that you know the MITRE attack policies are in place. Okay, if you know about how to crack your environment, you will be able to secure your environment. Okay, so if we think about our securing our environment from a possible hacker attack, these top things comes directly from a hacker. Okay, and these bottom things come directly from you. So if you think about, so let's say you have your environment over the cloud and you think that there can be a possible hacker who would be doing a recon of your environment. Okay, he would be scanning your environment. He would be doing passive scanning. He would be determining your domain and IP addresses and anything, trying to find the footprints. Then to oppose that thing, you should have policies and procedures in place. You have a firewall in place. You should have your users with the basic cybersecurity awareness training. If the possible hacker is deploying some packages, malware, scripting into your environment, to confront that, you should have threat and vulnerability management security controls into your place. If the hacker is delivering different infection vectors into your environment, to make your environment secure from the delivery perspective of hacker, you should have antivirus, web proxies, mobile device management, directory services into your cloud environment. If your environment is getting exploited by any of a red hat, what you have to do is that your environment should be secure with a good antivirus, with good EDR endpoint detection tool, and with an IDS or IPS in the place. If your environment is getting installed with malicious tools, you should have policies, EDRs, and antivirus in the place. If communication between the victims and their adversaries is going in place, you should have IDS, IPS, web proxies, firewalls, EDRs into your environment. So it goes both ways. If you want to secure your environment, you have to think like a hacker. You have to think like a black hat. Even if you don't want to be a black hat, you want to be a white hat in the market, you want to be known as a good person into the technical market, but you still have to think about and think like a black hat. Okay, if you're not thinking like a black hat, you will not be able to secure your environment. This is something that we this is a generic example. I will keep on switching between these two slides. This is actually my third last slide. So uh, here we are taking an example that there is this environment. This box is actually your cloud. You got a Windows server with Apache installed over it. You have a database, and there is a user inside. These are your credentials to access your environment, and then an internet. So what are the possible threats your cloud environment have? There can be basically two possible threats. One is from within your organization. Any of the user which is not happy with you, which is a grunge employed, we can look into these things, that these things should be secure to make sure that all of these things are in place. So to make sure our environment is fine, we can configure different web-based applications. We can use encryption to encrypt all of that data. We can configure the policies for the physical controls. We can deploy different SOC operation centers. For the user access management, we can deploy identity access management. So we have short of time. We can go to the last slide. This is my last slide. So these six things are basically the hot topics in the cloud hacking techniques. One is the session writing attack. What the usually people do is that they use your different cloud data center redirections and write those sessions. These are sort of man in the middle attack. So they look for different vulnerabilities into your sessions. The other thing is side channel attack. So if you have multiple machines into your environment and one machine is not secure, they can use that machine to attack all the other machines. Then we have a cloud-borne attack. Cloud-borne attack is basically done at a physical level. So if your physical environment is not secure, any hacker can inject a code into your server, and then they can impact the whole virtual environment. Then we have a man in the cloud attack. It's known as MITEC attack. So they can, what they do is that anyone from your on-prem deployment can go into the cloud and do a possible attack. We got a cloud hopper attack. Cloud hopper attack is basically a sort of phishing attack where a user is deploying a malware into your environment. Then we have obviously the S3 leaky buckets, because this is something that your data is getting lost. A lot of data is getting lost due to S3 leaky buckets into the cloud. So this is something, if we are aware of these things, we can make our environment, a cloud environment, perfectly protected. So yeah, this is all from my end. If you guys have any question for me, you can let me know. If you guys want to contact me for anything, for any help in any project, or if you want to learn anything, or if you want me to do anything for you, this is my email address. This is my name. These are my contact numbers. You can reach out to me over the LinkedIn, over my email, and I hope this was a good session. You guys might have learned something from this session. And again, I would like to pay my regards to Dr. Inam, Abdullah, Ruxar, Wakas, and all the guys who have made this show possible, and everything as per the plan. Thank you so much, guys. And if you have any question, you can ask me.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.